Welcome back to the Social Impact Level Up podcast. This is where we blur the lines between business, nonprofit, and impact. I'm your host, Wendy B, and I'm a social impact strategist here to help you build a successful and sustainable legacy of social change. In this week's bonus episode, we'll hear from a social entrepreneur who has been on a journey to change the world just like you. If you're interested in social entrepreneurship, this is the podcast for you. Let's jump right into this week's episode. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Social Impact Level Up podcast. I'm extremely excited about this episode because I get to have one of my business besties and mentors as a guest for you, and you're going to be so enthralled by what she has to say. Every time I have a conversation with Becky Corbett, I learn a ton of things as an entrepreneur, but I also just value her perspectives as a person. So I'm really excited to be here with her and have her in our space today. And I want to turn it to you, Becky, to introduce yourself and tell us first who you are and how you make an impact.
Thank you, Wendy. It is a pleasure to be here today. Wendy, as we always say, we talk fast, high energy, and we thoroughly enjoy each other's company. So thank you for having me on today. So who am I? Becky Corbett, the accent, born and raised New Orleans, Louisiana. Strong Jewish woman. Some may even say just a little stubborn. So it's hard to believe that I have 32 years experience in the helping field. And you'll probably notice, for those of you who are watching and not just listening, that I have some cheat sheets in front of me. And Wendy, one of the reasons why I did this is Wendy calls, we listen. Wendy calls, we want to provide our impact, and we want to be the best version of ourselves for ourselves, but also for Wendy. So I'm admitting a little nervous because I want to meet your expectations. So who am I? Becky Corbett. I'll do the math for everybody. 54 years old, been in the field for 32 years, in the helping field. Proud social worker. For 20 plus years, I gave to the nonprofit community. And then about 10 years ago, I said, well, that's been fun working for others. Let me go and recreate my small boutique consulting firm. So the first question that the attorney asks you is, what do you want to call your business? So I decided that I will call the business my name. That way I would remember the name of the business. So what does BS Corbett really stand for? Becky Schwartz, that's me, my family name. Some would say a little BS, which is also true. Some would say a lot of business, monkey business, and professional. The S is for solutions, and the C is for connections. For the last 10 years, Wendy, we have been providing coaching and training to emerging leaders, nonprofit execs, and behavioral health professionals. And I was really thinking into when you said, Becky, what's your impact? I thought, well, first I need to be honest with everybody and disclose. It's only been in the last year that I have called myself a lifestyle entrepreneur. I couldn't even spell the word entrepreneur in full transparency until last year, and I kept staring at it every day. And our goal is to help somebody be the best version of themselves. The second person I called was Big Brother, the ultimate businessman, and I start telling him about our products and services. And he says, I don't get it, Beck. Are we doing these personal, professional development qualities, traits of leaders for yourself personally or professionally? And my simple response to him, and has always been, yes. Our goal is to help people really figure out what they want to do for themselves first, then within their families and their loved ones, and then for the communities that they serve. So that's a little bit about me and how we got started with BS Corbett Consulting.
And I think people can probably hear so many parallels between how my business is set up and how your business is set up. And they'll be like, wait a second. And I'm like, I may have had some help from a very strong mentor, the ways to characterize what we do, right? Because I think we align in so many ways. And I think for people who don't know our backstory, we actually met at a University of Texas social work event where we were both speakers and we're both social workers. And we were listening to each other talk and we were like, you should be my friend. You have so many things in common with me, which was such a cool experience to see. And I know that I chose the field of social work because as a young person, I thought I wanted to give back through my career. It's a great way to connect with other people. I'm a people person, but I also just wanted this sense of like purpose for my career. Why did you choose social work? Or like, how did that become your focus?
Yeah, it's a great question, Wendy. I've always called this it's the business of social work. So when I set out on the journey and left New Orleans, always headed east. Went to Alabama because the entire family went to LSU, as you know that I joke. And I started in the business school. I was going to have my own business. I was probably going to sell something. That was the family background I came to. And then I woke up in my public speaking class and I had to talk about something for, I only was given 90 seconds. You know that I can talk a lot. So that was quite a defeat that I really actually stopped after 90 seconds. So I went to get an article and it was going to be about computers and IT because that was the up and coming thing in 1987. Yeah, and I was like, okay, no, not going to happen. And I found myself talking about human development in children. And I came to social work initially to help children and families. I wanted to be a couples therapist. I never did that. Is interesting to note. Now do executive coaching for partners and collaborators. So why social work? We are the people profession. We are the people that provide hope. We are the people who help people be better people. And I felt that my undergrad in human development and family studies, and then later my master's degree in social work, gave me the foundation to work with people, all facets of their lives, and then to expand that to organizations and communities.
Yeah. And I think that you're right. It's all about people that we serve, the causes that we are passionate about, and just being able to serve for your career is almost like a lifestyle choice, I think, for a lot of people who've been doing it 20, 30, 15 years, however many years you've chosen to do it, because you don't get the same pay as private sector. You don't always have the same benefits, like what kinds of, retirement, 401k sort of option, or even options in the business. So it's sometimes you almost think about it and it's like, wow, this is really was a lifestyle choice because I chose to do this and have some fulfillment personally along with my work and kind of in lieu of those things. And I think that that's been an interesting finding for me along the course of my journey. And I'm curious at what point did you just decide in your life that you wanted to help others? Was that something you always knew you wanted to do? Or did you one day just like, oh, yeah, I'm going to be a social worker? And that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah. That moment really started to change because of the public speaking class. I was enrolled in accounting at the time. I was taking a basic accounting class, and I hated it. And I hated it, and I didn't want to be in the class. And I realized I need to go talk to somebody. I was very fortunate. My parents agreed to pay for my undergrad degree, and I went and sought a counselor in human development. At the time, she helped me to understand that I could potentially still own my business. I could still work with people. And Wendy, I think probably the biggest highlight of this is I also realized I could make money. I wasn't sure if we were going to go down this path today or not. I'm really glad that we are. So, one of my famous mentoring lines to people at all stages of their career, particularly social workers and behavioral health professionals, never, ever, ever, ever accept the first offer. And as I became a preschool teacher, that lasted 2 months at the age of 21, I realized that I was going to have to go back for a master's degree. And if I was really going to initially do therapy, because that's what I thought I was going to do. In that journey through the MSW program, I thought I was going to be the therapist. And then I saw the first client after year one. And I'm not sure if I should admit this or not. I'm going to admit it publicly, and particularly with you. They put me to sleep in my head. And I kept thinking to myself, how can I make a better impact? So I did what I advise people to do. I sought more advice. And I went to the head of the MSW program at the time at the University of Alabama. And he said, well, you're going to be an administrator when you grow up. We all know it. We don't know why you're in denial. And we need the 10th person in planning and management. And I said, okay, sounds like a plan. So this was the forerunner to what we now call a nonprofit certification. And I realized really in my young 20s that if I studied social work, I could change the population, I could change the setting, I could do things at the individual level, I could work at the macro level, I could work within communities. And thus the journey became of a mix of business, running large nonprofits, and also caring for clients at the same time.
And I think people may not even know you use the word macro social worker. And I'm like, oh, yeah, well, I know what that is because I'm a macro level social worker, but people may not even know what that concept is. So I want to make sure we explain that one because that's a buzzword that we're like, yeah, but no. So macro level social work is those decisions at a communal level, societal level, policy level that affect people's lives. Things like Medicaid or things like the policies at a district around mental health for your children in a school. Like those are macro level social work. And then they kind of go down into the individual level of the person working one-on-one at the community or working one-on-one at the school with the parent and the child. So there's different levels to this work. And I think if people just think of social work always as that one facet of, oh, you take children away and put them into the foster care system, you don't understand the totality of the options in the field. And I think you're giving a really well-rounded example of one human being able to touch so many facets of work. But yeah, just what from management of a nonprofit to providing programming and services to affecting policy, all of those things are possible within one person's career trajectory or focusing on any one particular part. And I think that that was one of the exciting things about me to social work. I had the same revelation. I was like, one-on-one work, not for me. Other people totally built for it. Wendy Below's not built for it. How I appreciate your one-on-one problems. I actually, it was funny that we're both coaches of entrepreneurs. I was like, I never thought of it that way. I do use a lot of therapy skills with my actual people in coaching, but it's not therapy. It's like therapy for your business in a way.
Yeah.
But at least I have the flexibility to use those skills. They're in my toolbox. And then most of my time has been spent on the advocacy, the policy, advancing social agendas, moving people forward as groups and collaboratives. That's where I like to spend my time. But I love that each of us, especially people in a social work field, we kind of have our niche, our specialties. And a lot of the times we're able to kind of come together on projects and work across specialties and support each other. So I think if people haven't seen the flexibility of social work, you just gave a great example in one person of how you could do so many things. And somebody's actually
you gave a great definition. So between us, we make a really good team here.
I know. And somebody's told me before that I'm a Swiss Army knife of social impact work. I know you are as well. So tell me if you could just give us a brief example in this of what types of issues you've worked on before, because I'm pretty sure it's across the whole gamut.
Yeah. Wendy, I always love talking to you because you challenge me to pause and think. And just so that your audience knows, she didn't give me that question to prep in advance. So I'm gonna talk about leadership because I think that this and you want me to go brief, and you know I can't do that, so you'll just cut me off. Tell me to stop. When I think of an impact in our social work community, it's helping the people who are helping the people. And I learned that we tend to, social workers helping professionals, behavioral health professionals, we take care of everybody but ourselves. By the way, I think that's also a theme for women. Women who, like me, think that they can grow up and have it all. I'm now learning in the stage of my life and career, can have it all, just not at the same time. So that impact that we have and focus on is helping people be a better leader of themselves. Over time, I created, and the team has helped me articulate leading me principles. And three quick summaries that I think or brief statements that help people. Wendy, I'm going to ask you to repeat after me, just like we do with our base, if you don't mind. Okay.
Sure.
It's
It's
all
all
about
about
me.
me.
Yeah. Foreign concept, right?
Yeah, that sounds so weird.
What are you talking about, Becky? We choose our intentional growth. And what I've learned, whether I was serving a social work student, whether it was a supervisee, is that if we don't take the time to intentionally decide what we want for ourselves, our families, our work, we're not going to be able to lead others. The second part of leading me is relationship building. I think of this quote all the time. We become the sum of the 5 people we spend the most time with. 5 people. If you think about that, we take on the behaviors, we take on the energy, we may take on the toxicity. So when I think about relationships and building Team Becky or Wendy, Team Wendy, who are we surrounding ourselves by for ourselves and for our communities? And then the third component of leadership is how are we going to get the results we're looking for? How are we going to repair our corner of the world, one person at a time, one policy at a time, one community at a time? And we got to act. We have to move our ideas to action. So for me, when you say, what's one example? It's all of that. It's being the leader of yourself so that you can help others be leaders and then create the results that we want in our communities.
Yeah. And I think that's such a great example of the work that you've done because we both talk about that idea to action concepts and needing to, especially in this work, if you sit stagnant, then the good work doesn't get done. So the people who could potentially be benefiting from you taking action are not getting served. And we're just continuing to perpetuate these very harmful cycles for folks. So the people that we serve are these folks that are really pivotal, and when they lose their way or they lose their momentum or they don't have the ability to step up as leaders, then we don't realize, but that we're suffering in some way because the good work that they were going to do just doesn't get done. And so I think that that's such a great concept. And I know what you were saying about it's all about me. We are, and I talk about it on the podcast all the time, we're so used to as servant leaders putting everyone else forward and not taking the time for your own well-being. And I know I had mentioned that we always ask this question, so you're probably prepared for this question to be exactly
I'm
next.
ready for this one. Listen, and can we talk about this for 5 other episodes, please?
Yes, because everybody has had to, and I think that I want to ask this question to you, and it's a very specific way.
Okay.
I know as an entrepreneur versus what I did before, I had to reformat my wellness for this version of my life. And I'm curious how you've been able to maintain your well-being to show up and serve people, especially because you had that same pivot at some point where you went from whatever your career was before a nonprofit to doing this coaching and consulting on your own terms. How did you navigate that in your well-being journey? Because it could be really stressful to leave a career and start your own thing.
Think extremely stressful. I'm gonna give credit and use 2 words on what turned the corner. Nana Banana. My Nana lived to be 103 and a half years old. May her memory forever be a blessing. And when I set out on the journey and left the stability of the full-time job, amazing benefits, well into 6 figures, salary, an entire team. That's what I miss the most, by the way, is a team to delegate. I'm sure you do as well, Wendy. I turned to Nana and said, we need to write a book. And she's like, we aren't writing a book. I'm 101 and a half years old. And I said, well, I want your help. I want to put your legacy down on paper. As it turned out, when I turned to Nana, she ended up having to go to the hospital. Now, this is a woman who had only been in the hospital only a very few times in her life. And are you ready for the diagnoses, Wendy? Because, all right, here we go. It was, drum roll, please, dehydration. Nana was 101 and a half.
She was dehydrated.
Yeah. And she believed that she drank water, which is opposite of what I'm doing now as we are doing this podcast. She believed it would rust the pipes. Let me just fast forward. Nina lived to be 103 and a half years old. So Nana, I bring her home from the hospital and I decide I'm going to stay with her for 2 weeks and make sure she is fully recovered. By the way, she was fully living alone and continued to for almost until her death. And Nana would hear me. I would be working on my new company, and Nana would yell up the stairs to me and say, "It's time to rest." I would ignore her. She'd yell back up, "What are you doing up there?" It's time to sit. Take a breath. Breathe. And I soon at 3 p.m. every day percolated her coffee in the old percolator, which was as old as Nana. I went to her favorite bakery and made sure that we had the Danish that she wanted. And every afternoon at 3 o'clock, we sat and we talked and we designed the principles for the Bridge to Hope and Healing. And Nana taught me at that moment that if I don't figure out how to stop, pause, breathe, take care of myself, whatever that looks like for me, I won't be able to sustain the energy that I needed to create something completely new. It was a foreign concept to start my own business, and I wanted to be an author. Unfortunately, Nana died before she saw the entirety of the book. What I will say, though, is, Wendy, I think sometimes people see you or they see me and they think we're not real, right? They can see that we can dress up, we can get in a webcam, we can talk about our careers. I was a nervous wreck about 30 minutes before this podcast. And the strength in the wellness and what turns the corner is I literally say, what would Nana say? And I live what I do. I'm talking to you today to hope that it inspires somebody to continue their own social impact, maybe to become a social entrepreneur, lifestyle entrepreneurial themselves. But I do that in the honor of Nana. She is the one who taught me to sit, take a breath, rest.
Yeah, it's funny. I love that you brought up the book because that was the next question I was going to ask you. Was actually in the journey of the book, but I read the book years ago when I met you, and I learned about Nana Banana. And as soon as you said Nana Banana, I knew who that was. And I think, yeah, it sticks with you. The thing I thought was really cool about the book, as we go sort of in that direction, was not only that it was very practical, but the lessons that they learned were very short, so that people could apply them directly to your life. And I remember exactly who I gave the book to, who, by the way, never gave it back to me, because they were going through something hard at the moment. And I said, "Oh, I have this really wonderful book that was written by a wonderful friend of mine. Let me loan it to you." And then handed it to said person and still yet have not seen it back. But I think that is...
I know where to get you another one.
Yeah, I might know where to source some books.
Yeah, drop on Monday.
Right. It'll be my Christmas stocking this year. Yeah. But what I love about that part of the story is that someone else besides me needed it so much that they didn't want to give it back, right? That it was such a helpful resource to them that they found value in it and were going to keep it in their own collection, right? Which I think is also a very powerful testament to the book. So can you tell people the name of the book and the premise of the book and a little bit more about what you get in the book? Because I think that people might be interested in picking this up. And could you get it on Amazon, or where do you actually acquire it?
Thank you for asking. It's called The Bridge to Hope and Healing, 9 Principles to Guide You in a Moment of Crises. Yes, it's available on Amazon. You can also email me directly and I'll happy to help somebody. I'm sorry, I just drew a blank.
What's the book about, Becky? Tell us about your book. Yeah. Well, I wrote it so long ago. It's like, improving your stuff. So there it is.
Thank you. I just drew a blank. My mind starts to wonder when we talk about Nana. I used to tell Nana, because she lived so long, I'm like, do me a favor, wherever you're going, will you just call me when you get there? We literally talked every day for the 2 years leading up to her death, and she hasn't called. So I certainly dream about her, think about her, and she lives within our hearts. The premise behind the book is they're pretty simple. 9 principles to follow. They're not meant to be done in order. It's for people to look at those concepts for what they need in a moment of crises. It begins with what I say, it's the fog. It's the feeling we get when we hear the cancer diagnoses. It's when our heart starts beating fast from the phone call in the middle of the night, and we learn that a loved one has passed away. It is the reality that we wake up and for the health of ourselves might just need that divorce. And the practical implication is each principle gives you 4 journal prompts to help you build your bridge for that specific moment in crises. The practical tips come from when any of us is going through a personal crisis or a professional life circumstance. It could be even a change in your entire chain of command. And that is a personal, professional life circumstance. When that happens to us, we need a way out of the fog. And showing strength and courage, identifying our values, knowing our resources, identifying our resources. My favorite one is the one about forgiving and letting go. Now, my friends and dear colleagues will tell you my favorite one is the one that I'm the worst at. Not the forgiveness. I do that very quickly. I have a hard time letting go of something maybe I didn't mean to say on the podcast, or did I have 2 ums or 5 ums, or something that I may have upset a colleague for the day. So letting go, I'm always striving for every day. The principles are meant to help you rebuild your own healing. Uh, in today's world, Wendy, we can all have arguments. Are we going to call it hope? Are we allowed to say resiliency? I have some CEOs do not use the word self-care. Are we going to call it healing? I think that the best use of the book is to help you reflect on your current crises or a previous life circumstance, what you can do to put in your toolbox for yourself, for our own healing, so that we can be a whole person.
I think you and I have the same faults because I can never forgive myself in order to let go. I'll still think about the thing that I said to the person to upset them, 4 days later. I never see that person again. I don't know why I'm still thinking about it. I totally
So
empathize.
next time I'm calling you and you can call me.
Yeah, I empathize with you. You said that was triggered back to a moment in October, and I was like, that moment. But I appreciate that. And I know that your book isn't just for people who are looking for leadership principles. This was really about and rooted in a story of deep healing for you, and how we as humans all have our variation of those needs to go through these healing processes over time. And the principles were very concrete and they were really great examples. And then I know, like, so the book that I gave away, I purposefully didn't write in it because I was like, oh, I don't want to mess up my book. But it is very much like a journaling experience when you buy it. The prompts are written there for you to write within the book itself, so that as you're going through this lesson, you're able to to process through the thing.
And Wendy, one of the things that I recommend to people, because we have, it's not just a book. We do trainings. We have trained social workers and other behavioral health professionals to ask these questions, answer these questions, help people build their own bridge. Wendy, all you got to do is call me, and I'll send you the PDF of the document of the prompts.
Yes.
Hopefully, there won't be another crises for you, but there will be. And the reason why I said that is, you mentioned the word leadership in your last sentence. For me, this is being the leader of ourselves. If we show up at work, whether it's in the webcam or it's in-person work for the day, and the dog is sick, the child has gone undiagnosed, but we can't seem to get rid of the sniffles, or you're concerned about an aging parent, or you're dealing with your own health crises, we cannot be the complete employee that we want to be. So when I think of leadership, it's twofold. I've always said I'm going to end up writing these two books backwards. The first book I should have written 10 years ago was the Leading Me Principles, which will be that concept of leading ourselves, then others, so that we can get the results and the actions we're looking for. That is going to follow the same format, by the way. The backstory of this book that is scheduled to be published by this summer of 2024 is my career in social work, decisions that I made. And that's the inspiration, is so that people will start to tell their stories. People will negotiate a better salary for themselves. People will learn to be better communicators, practical tips. And I appreciate your reflection on that. All my stuff sounds real simple, but it is really hard to do, to gather those resources, to find time to invest in other people. And the one thing I'll say about both of these journeys for my career is I'd only say it to people if I was willing to do it myself. And I think the learning for the next half of my life is how can I help people tell their stories? And that's the goal, is to put these resources out there, so people can be a better person for themselves and articulate their stories to the people they care about.
I think we have that shared goal, because that's really what this podcast is about, is how can we continue to inspire others to make the choice to serve whatever capacity that is for them, to just also follow and pursue your life's purpose, whatever that is for you. And hearing about inspiring folks who have done that and are still okay, right? Because sometimes it can be scary to make some of these choices. Like, yeah, let me veer off into entrepreneurship. Sure, that sounds like a good idea. But
It sounded great at the time.
it always sounds great in theory, right? And the execution is the devil in the details. But I think that the people who listen to this appreciate the behind the scenes aspects of, like, well, yeah, it is scary, and I do have to make these choices, but also there's things that you can do to kind of work yourself through that. And I like this idea of leadership principles for yourself as a person, not only in your capacity that you serve professionally, but really just as a human. How do you lead? And I think that that's going to be a really powerful book. So I'm excited for that to come out. And that comes out in June, right? You said?
I hope so. Yeah,
So sometime soon, like in the next,
it will be summer.
in the next year, we'll see it.
It will be summer of 2024. I purposely hold myself accountable, which is one of the practical concepts. If I say it out loud, then we have to make that happen.
Well, now it's recorded also. So
yeah, there we go. When you want to highlight something for you, because I want to give this phrase to our audience that's listening. Two phrases. I want you to look in the mirror and reflect as you lead listening or watching this podcast, and truly ask yourself, am I leading me? Are you doing what you want to do for you, within your families, for your own self-care, for your own education, for your own soul? Am I leading me? And the second phrase that I would like everybody to think about is, would I follow? So that's what we're talking about. Am I leading me and would I follow me? Um, and I think that if we would all just pause. Some of us have spent a career, a lifetime, personally, professionally, asking ourselves this question every single day. Um, and for some of us, we just need permission to just stop. The world is spinning. The world will keep spinning. And I'm giving your listeners, our colleagues, our friends, the permission to just stop and pause. And we all have it in us to build a bridge, to build a new bridge, and surround ourselves with the people who love us, care about us, and will encourage us uh, to be the best we can.
Yeah. And I think it's really neat to think of the concept, would you follow yourself? Because that's a very loaded
It's a hard
question.
one, isn't it?
I was like, would I listen to this podcast? I mean, I think I would. I feel like,
Yeah.
I don't know. So appreciate the reflection.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Wendy, can I share one thing with you?
Sure.
I had a fellow social entrepreneur call me, and I guess another one I'm mentoring. You can see that I like people a lot, and I like to invest in people for pay, yes, but certainly within my network as well. And I was talking to this gentleman yesterday, and he sent me the concept of a new program, and I thought to myself, I did the math on it and I figured out what it was going to be and I understood the value. And I thought, I wonder if he's asked himself the question, if I was the CEO of the former nonprofit that he used to run, would I buy this package? So I just think it's a great way for all of us to pause and stop and think. Do you want to be in the room with yourself? It's a great question.
As an entrepreneur, I think that's a great question about your products and services too, because it's so scary when you're first putting yourself out there to say, I have this to share with the world, this thing no one's ever seen, like you said before. And I know the value in it. And now I have to communicate that value so people will purchase it and invest in me. And sometimes the hardest part for me is I don't see my own value because I'm just too busy working, right? Like, I'm like, let me just do these things. So people come up and they're like, you're a master networker, you're a master organizer.
Because you didn't pause and reflect, Wendy.
Have a mirror to do the reflection, right? Because
Hey, I'll mail you a mirror too. I got the package.
yeah. And I think that there's probably a lot of people in the helping professions who are just those doers, right? Like you jump into the job, you get it done, you do what's asked of you. You've been sort of systematized to perform high. And then when you get to this point of needing to like reflect and it's just not there, it's like you fall off a cliff. You're like, perform. And just keep performing without ever looking back and saying, oh, yes, I did a great job. And sometimes we forget to celebrate those moments or to appreciate ourselves or to give ourselves some sort of kudos, hug, pat on the back, like anything. And I've often found myself stopping clients and saying like, hey, you have to do those reflection moments because sometimes nobody else is going to be your cheerleader, especially if you're a solopreneur.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious in your journey, what have been those challenging moments that you've had to get overcome and continue to show up as your own cheerleader so that you could keep moving forward and do what you thought was, your mission?
Rejection. Rejection from a client, proposal that you may have put your heart and soul into building the relationship, client telling you the money is there, and then changing their mind before they sign that final agreement. By the way, I have a concept that I use on that. Nothing happens in a business unless something sells. And I remind myself of that everybody has good intentions, but until you get that contract or agreement signed, maybe for some of us, even the initial check, and I'm, just showed my A's saying the word check. I think people know what I'm talking about on the payment, even if it's electronic. Um, it's uh, it's getting that rejection and not taking it personally, because I think so many of us as a social entrepreneur, it is our stuff. right? It's Nana's story. It's Becky's leadership or that worked for her in nonprofits. So I take it a little personally sometimes if somebody says no. What I do when that rejection happens is I try to really hear the why. Was it the money? What was it? Not the right timing. It maybe I wasn't the right person or the right fit. So I do that reflection and say, how can I help you? Another disappointment that I would say over the 10 years is that we always talk about sustainability in nonprofits and in the work that we do and in government work. And we're able to move hundreds and thousands of dollars for special circumstances, whether it's through our federal, state governments or whether it's through foundations. So even a large nonprofit, a $20 million company, they have to worry about sustainability and where's that next business going to come from. So I think what has been the hardest, Wendy, is how far in the future can I feel secure with the business that's coming in their seasons? And that would be probably another really big learning lesson. Sometimes there's big projects. You and I both know we can't be at two places at the same time. So we have to work on those, but you're smiling. I know you can give your own example of this. So if we're with a client, how can we be doing business development at the same time? And it's finding that harmony, similar to our personal and our professional lives. How do you find that harmony in running a social entrepreneurship, scaling yourself, uh, in how much can you get done in any given day? I'll keep going on and on. So
No, I know. We do like the whole so next season about just this topic because I think this is so important when you're, especially as a business person or a founder or a leader in your own entity, and also a service provider in your own entity. It is overwhelming sometimes to be all those things. So I know businesses from photographers to consultants who have the same struggle. And I think that I've heard a lot of people say the same things as you, that the problem in the scaling is also that it's difficult for me to clone me and trust another person to do like I would do because I don't know that they're going to provide the same service I'm providing in my way. Right.
Mhm.
And that has been a big lesson I've tackled this year by bringing on a subcontractor, bringing on interns. And I know one of the lessons in our last breakfast that stuck with me was you had told me the word boutique as a consulting firm can mean what you want it to mean. It can mean you by your top stroke do the whole project, or it can mean you bring people for a portion of time together to do a project, and then y'all go and scatter and move away, and you still continue on in your consulting as you would. So, could you just give that wisdom to our audience in the same way that you gave it to me? Like, how have you managed to stay quote unquote boutique, but still augment and flow with the work that's come to you?
Okay, so Wendy, I got to remember exactly what I even said. I know where we were eating. I probably remember what I was eating. Now I got to remember what the mentoring and the lessons learned is. All right. In all seriousness, here's how I describe it over the last 10 years. Uh, it's been the choice of the flexibility. When do I need the team and when do I not? If the contract is big enough, I have uh, always had people in my wheelhouse. So part of what I've done is, well, I don't know if programming is going to go towards the bridge or hope and healing and self care, but I want to make sure I have solid coaches and facilitators in our repertoire that I know that I could call upon uh, for two things. One, can I list them as part of the work? And two, if we get the work and the unthinkable happens and it's big enough, what is their availability? So I have to invest in those relationships, even if it's somebody I haven't talked to in a while. I've got names on the ticklers and always looking to meet strong collaborators and team members. The other thing I had to do over the 10 years is I just had to accept that I'm not going to have a full-time executive coordinator. Sometimes I am my own best secretary. I am the one who knows my calendar. I like scheduling with my coaching 101 clients when the session is about over. They know, I know we don't have to go through, even if they have a secretary or coordinator themselves, they know when they're going to meet with me again. We can set those expectations. And then there are times that the volume is high that you use a coordinator, and that's okay. So I guess I would just add, it's okay to be flexible. It's okay that it doesn't have to follow the same path for 10 years running. And once I've freed myself from that misperception that it had to be the same every single year, uh, I think that's how I've been able to flow with one team member, two team members, part-time team members, 30-hour team members.
I think that's so helpful too, because the only trajectory that you often hear is grow, right? And so a lot of people just say, oh, well, you're getting good when you need help. And then you get more people
Right.
and you get more people and you just keep going. And then you're a startup and you have this whole staff and all these things happen. And I'm like, whoa, is there another alternative? So I appreciate your description
Yeah.
of the alternative, which is to kind of be flexible with what is needed according to
Yeah.
the work that comes to you,
Yeah.
which is so helpful.
I think and something on
Absolutely.
grow, because it just triggered another thought. I think the individual has to define what is growth, right? So it's all relative. If growth is the first 2 years, I'm putting nothing in my retirement, and every dime that I make, I want to create another curriculum or another product or another trademark, then that's growth. If you then wake up, I might be talking from for about myself. 5 years later or 6 years later, all right, that's enough of the trademarks. It's time to get back to that retirement. So I would just be careful when we say the word grow. We got to define, what does that look like, and how do we measure it?
And it's not always measured by money, which is, I think, the part that is the most tedious lesson to learn, because initially you're fueled by the idea of money. But then I think even when you start getting those big months and the money, you realize like, oh, growth is not about growing more money always. Yep. Yeah, it could be about growing the copyrights and the trademarks and the IP and the team or whatever other dimension of growth that you're working on. So I know I could talk to you for hours. I know you have another appointment. I do as well. But I also just wanted to give you space, because you are such a wise person, to impart some last wisdom on us before you tell us. So last question is an open-ended question. Becky, anything you want to share with us, share with us. And then the final question is for the audience who might be looking for you. I will put all your stuff into the show notes, but just give us a preview of where we could find you. So last question, and then last question. What any other wisdom you have, and then where could we find you?
Thank you for this opportunity, Wendy. I think the final reflection, I told you I had prepared some notes, and I'm looking at, the notes and what I thought your viewership or what you might be looking for. And believe it or not, as I look down at the themes, the words of wisdom I would give, it's really just two, believe it or not. One is a strengths-based perspective, a positive attitude. My social work training, my own faith in Judaism, in Nana taught me that how you show up, this podcast will go well. The positive thinking, what you have to say, somebody might want to hear it. What you have to say is important. And more importantly, I did this today for Nana. I believe in her legacy. It wasn't about Becky. So be positive. If you are the person that is grunting and frowning and not the wife or the husband or the partner or the spouse or the sister or the brother or the friend that you would want, just stop and pause. Find a Wendy in your life, personally or professionally. Find a Becky in your life, personally and professionally, to encourage you to remember it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And lead with that positive attitude. The second thing that I would say is gratitude is everything. I think when we express gratitude in handwritten form, verbally, with an expression, with a hug, I think it takes us out of ourselves and truly helps other individuals know that somebody is listening. Somebody cares about them. So Wendy, gratitude in action. I'm not quite sure you realize what timing you have had to help me re-energize, find my voice from a strategic standpoint. And I am using the word strategic. What is leading me? Well, leading me is doing a podcast, scared to death, with somebody that I know, like, and trust. So thank you for the opportunity to come on the podcast and for sharing you with me
Well,
today.
mi casa es su casa. Anytime. You're welcome to come back. Because I'm sure we got to talk about sustainability. We have like all these other things in this episode that I wrote in my head. It was like those conversations with Becky would be amazing. We need to talk about all these things. So
Wendy, when we break bread, because I think, you and I do well when we break bread and we're just talking, that's probably what we actually need to film. It's just,
yeah, we could do a sneak preview of our mentoring meetings. This would be great. I know. I'm sure that we could even put them on social media. Probably people would love to watch that live. But I think that you are just such a wonderful person. I'm so grateful for my network for bringing us together because it just happenstance in the same room at the same time through the network of wonderful social workers that we know. But how can people, if they're deliberately looking for you, where are they going to go to find you?
Thank you for prompting me for that question. So best way to find me is directly Becky at bscorbettconsulting.com. Our website has that same URL, LinkedIn, Becky S. Corbett, and I'm old school. So that means I'm going to ask for an intentional conversation if anybody would like to learn more about how you can be a better leader of yourself and personally and professionally take care of you. Thank you.
So then I'm going to do a second part to that. Go ahead and pick up The Bridge to Hope and Healing on Amazon, or you can probably get it on Kindle, I think, as well on Amazon. And then Becky's new book, which will be coming out in 2024, we'll look for that as well. So it's been so nice to have you, Becky. Hugs to you in your new location. And I just wishing you a wonderful, wonderful week. And thank you for being here with us.
Thanks, Wendy. Take care.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Social Impact Level Up podcast. It's been awesome to interview today's guest, and I hope that you leave inspired to take action. If you're looking for any information we discussed in today's episode, it's probably down in the show notes. Make sure that you're checking that out and clicking on any of the links that seem amazing to you. If you need support building your business or your nonprofit, book a one-on-one call with me. The link's also down in the show notes. Thanks for being part of the Social Impact Level Up Collective, and get ready for Season 3 coming up this spring.